girls still have a little bit of alfalfa in the feeder. There's still a lot of hay in the hay feeder. And look at them. Look how content they are. Well, hey girls. How are you? They're just sitting out here. I think the sun was out a second ago. It's gone away now. But honestly, guys, I have never had such a content group of goats. Normally they are trying to run me over in order to get into the milking parlor because that's where they know I keep the grain. But this has been my herd ever since I started feeding free choice alfalfa pellets. Now, full disclosure, I don't actually know what I'm talking about, okay? I do my best to teach how to raise goats based on my experience. Truthfully, I haven't been raising goats for a long time, but you know, sometimes it doesn't take very much time to gain a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and I do my best to try and pass on what I have learned onto you guys and to learn alongside you guys. So I definitely want your inputs and your thoughts and your experience, so please do share them as we talk about the new feed change here. Oh, here they come now. Okay, you gonna come sit with me, Winnie? I'm probably gonna knock you over, so we'll see how long this lasts. But I got my first goats in 2020 amidst all of that chaos, and with that chaos came a lot of weird like feed shortages and price changes, and it was a lot. And I have gone through a lot of different ways of feeding my goats, and over the years I have actually experienced losses in my herd because of the way that I was feeding. So any kind of feed change has been sort of a struggle for me. I get nervous about making any kind of feed changes, and really the switch to feeding free choice alfalfa pellets was no different. This is something that I had never heard about. Apparently it's pretty common more on the West Coast. I might not get to sit here and do it like I wanted. Nope, I gotta get up. I gotta get up. But one of the main things that I feel like I've learned in the last year especially is how important a goat's nutrition is to their overall health. Really, they need about 1 pound of high quality feed per 25 pounds of goat. And the high quality part is really important because goats are a production animal. We're constantly asking them to produce something for us, whether it be milk or babies. Their bodies are constantly working, and all that work takes a lot of nutrition. And alfalfa is one of those almost superfoods as far as livestock goes, to really help give them a lot of nutrition without a lot of the risks that can come with feeding grain. So when we first got goats, I was feeding a lot of grain. It was not a high quality grain. I was actually feeding one specific grain to basically the whole farm. It was an all stock pellet. I think it might have been 12% protein. I did have goats like Margie who just thrive no matter what I give them, but that isn't always the case. And that's not to say Margie hasn't had her issues, because she's had. My Margie is very prone to bloat. I say that. She's the most prone to bloat. She'll bloat every couple of years for one reason or another. Usually it's because she's refusing to eat her food because she's kind of picky, and then she'll suddenly decide that she's wanting to eat, and that sudden influx of nutrition into her gut is what can throw her balance off. But then we experienced some losses due to that feed having too much phosphorus. I had a buck actually that was eating that feed, and he developed urinary calculi, and this buck was really, really big, and I was unable to load him in my minivan in order to take him to the vet. The vets were unwilling to come out and help me, and I did everything I could, but he had to be put down anyway. And it was really at that point that I decided I really needed to take the goat's nutrition more seriously than I had. I kind of thought that nutrition and focusing on higher quality was more for like a show herd, that it was less of something that a homestead goat had to worry about. You hear these stereotypes that goats will eat anything and they'll thrive off of anything. You could throw a goat in a pasture that has, you know, just garbage in it, and a goat is gonna thrive, and that is not always the case, especially when it comes to production animals. And I think that most homesteaders, not that we focus on having the most production, but we usually don't fill our homesteads full of pets. We need something out of them, and that thing normally needs to balance out with the cost of keeping them. If they don't pull their weight, usually a homestead animal does not stay. After that buck of mine passed away, I bought some new animals, and with those those new animals came a really great mentor who taught me more about goat nutrition. And I switched to a higher quality feed, which a lot of you are used to seeing here on the channel. And I will talk about the cost difference of the more recent way of me feeding and the new way of me feeding. And I was actually pretty surprised to see it. I am getting chewed on, so I think I'm gonna move to the milking area. This time of year really is the most expensive time of year to feed the herd. We don't have a lot of grass growing, so we're feeding a lot of hay, and we're feeding a lot of what's called concentrates, you know, grains and things like the alfalfa pellet. I'm pretty sure are considered a concentrate. I don't know, it might just be considered a forage product for all I know. But in any case, I'm feeding a lot of things that are purchased in just because I don't have a lot that is really coming off of my own land right now in order to support my animals. So the prices that I'm going to go over are like worst case scenario, it's the most expensive time of year. I do not spend this throughout the whole year, but we spend the rest of the year kind of saving up, preparing for hay season and the time when our goats are really going to be relying on what we can purchase in order to sustain themselves. I've taken y'all on feed runs before, and when I do my feed run, I buy whatever I need for a week. We have a minivan. I don't have a lot of feed storage here, and so I can't really stock up on a lot of feed, but what I had been feeding was 4 bags of Milk Maker 17% goat feed that goes for all of the goats to include the bucks. I like it. It's got a 2-to-1 calcium to phosphorus ratio, which is great for prevention of the development of bladder stones in both the bucks and the does, and it also has ammonium chloride as an ingredient, and that also helps break up any bladder stones. Along with that, I would buy 2 bags of alfalfa pellets, usually a bag of mineral, and then whatever else could be needed on the farm with like the chickens and the rabbits and things. The entire dairy goat herd, to include the meters and the bucks, will go through that much feed plus half of one of these large bales of hay in 1 week, or at least that's what they did eat. And I ran the cost of that. So weekly, the Milk Maker pellet cost $75. The alfalfa pellet consumed was $40, and the alfalfa orchard grass hay combination, the amount of hay that the herd ate was $68. Now this is going to change depending on region. Even the concentrates can vary quite a lot in their cost region to region, but hay especially can really vary in cost. So keep that in mind with what I'm talking about. But also I'd go through about a half a bag of mineral. I buy this mineral, it's a Comach 2-to-1 goat mineral, and usually I go through one of these every 2 weeks. I go through less of the mineral in the summertime. I tend to go through a lot more of it when we're feeding hay. So I did the math, and weekly the entire goat herd costs about $193 in order to feed. And again, that's worst case scenario. That is winter time. That's when we kind of have a lot of goats. They're pregnant, some of them are lactating, and everything that they're eating is coming off of farm. So I've been feeding the free choice alfalfa pellet now just to the doe barn for a little over 3 weeks. And that's not a lot of time to really make a surefire determination of what I think, but these are my first impressions and I'm actually very impressed. I was a little bit leery and nervous because I have goats like Margie who are prone to bloat, and I've heard of things like alfalfa bloat, and we have had issues in the past with goats dying of things like Clostridial disease, which is a disease that they can get from overeating on really nutritious foods. The bacteria just proliferates in their gut and it turns into a spiral. It's really hard for them to come back on. So these experiences made me really nervous thinking about having something this nutritionally dense just free choice. It seemed like I was opening, you know, the feed bin and just letting them have at it and saying, well, good luck. And it just didn't feel responsible to me, but I've been talking to several wonderful people who have talked me off a ledge and said how well it's working for their herds, and I went ahead and tried it. And we're really, really liking it. As you saw, the goats just are more content. They seem happier. Previously, I was feeding out the grain pellet once a day, and they were pretty frantic whenever I came to feed. They always had hay out. They would sometimes run out of their hay overnight. But really, if you think about it, when they're having one big meal of concentrates a day, that's going to result in a blood sugar spike, and a more consistent blood sugar is probably good for their systems. It's probably good for their production, their overall state. And so I'm really liking how the goats seem to be responding. They're doing really well. Everyone is keeping condition well. I haven't found that anyone has even pretended to bloat or seem a little bit off or anything. It's just been nothing but good. Now, I will say I had been feeding a little bit of alfalfa. I didn't feed no alfalfa and then suddenly all kinds of alfalfa. We did feed those 2 bags every week, and their hay was an orchard grass alfalfa hay. I don't think I would necessarily switch cold turkey. It's something you maybe would want to wean into if you hadn't been feeding alfalfa previously, but so far it's good. Now, it's good for the goats. How is it on the wallet? Because everyone knows alfalfa is expensive. And so I did the math for you guys. My goats here in the goat barn go through one 50-pound bag of alfalfa pellets every single day. You saw how the feeder was pretty much eaten down. They still have, you know, a few hours worth of feed left in there. So by the time I come down to milk, fill up that feeder, we'll go through another 50 pounds. That's consistently what I'm seeing out of my girl barn. I'll have to count them and put how many goats are here down below. But really, again, it's less about how many goats there are, but it's about pound per pound of goat. So 1 pound of feed should feed about 25 pounds of goat, and that's all feed. That's the alfalfa, that's whatever the milkers are getting on the milk stand. I do still feed the milk maker pellet on the milk stand, and it's whatever they eat in hay, which has been a lot less, and whatever they happen to forage out on the field, which I was surprised to see that they do forage out in the field. They'll leave whatever's in the feeder and just go browse on the little bit of nothing that's out there this time of year. I didn't expect that. I expected them just to be kind of married to that alfalfa feeder, and I think they probably were for the first couple of days, but once they really leveled out and it became less of a, I guess, new thing, less of a commodity to them, they'll take it and eat it and do well on it, but it's not like an obsession, and they will go out and enjoy the pasture too. So all of those feed stuffs make up that 1 pound of feed per 25 pounds of goat. So even though I'm feeding X amount of goats, that might be different if your goats are larger or smaller. The first thing I noticed when I started feeding free choice alfalfa was that the girls, my does who are milking, were not as eager to come up on the milk stand. And this is the one gripe that I feel like I have with feeding free choice alfalfa pellets. They're not as eager for grain, so they're not as eager to come up on the stand, and they're not as willing to stand still for very long when they're on the milk stand. I guess it's kind of good that they're not just so hungry that they're hyper focused on their feed and standing there no matter what, but you know, when you're trying to milk a goat, you really want them to stand still. So that's the only gripe that I have. I feel like the struggles that we've had recently with that are probably temporary. It's one of those things where a goat will take a little bit to get used to a new routine, and I think we're just experiencing that. Actually, when I was filming the B-roll for this video, all of the girls came up really nicely onto the stand. That is not what we've been dealing with in the last couple of weeks. We've had to actually take 2 people to go out and get some of these goats and haul them up onto the milk stand in order to be milked, and they've just sort of been picking at the pellets. They haven't really cared about them. Not the alfalfa pellets, the grain pellets, the milk maker. They've been going through very little. So as far as the weekly cost, now that we're feeding free choice alfalfa, we have $25 a week in the milk maker pellet, and that's what the girls are eating on the stand. I do feed that to my bucks, and my pig Chloe does get fed the milk maker pellet. We purchased $140 worth of the alfalfa pellet for 7 days. That's 1 bag a day. 1 bag near me is $20 a bag, a little bit less. And another major difference that I'm noticing is that the girls are going through far less hay. I mentioned it in a vlog recently when I talked about the fact that we're selling all of our Nigerian dwarves, that the goats are eating about half of the hay that they used to. I feed one of the larger flakes out of that bigger bale to the barn every day, and I feed one of those larger flakes to my bucks every day. So I'm only going through 2 of those flakes every day, which is making our hay last a really long time. And because I'm feeding free choice alfalfa out to the girls, the last time we purchased hay, we purchased bales that were only orchard grass. I didn't feel like I needed the combo orchard grass and alfalfa because I had the free choice alfalfa out, which was good because my hay supplier didn't have any more of the combination anyway. So we got the orchard grass. That was $100 per one of these larger bales. And so weekly, the goats are going through about $25 worth of hay. All of the goats, which is really crazy. That's a crazy low number for the amount of goats that I have. And the last thing that I noticed as far as what my goats are taking in is they are taking in far less of the loose mineral now that they have the free choice alfalfa pellet out there. I don't really know exactly what would cause this, except for maybe there are good amount of minerals pelletized into those alfalfa pellets. All it is chopped up and compressed hay. And if it's good quality hay that was baled with good nutrition in it, then it would stand to reason that they would require less of the loose mineral. And that's what I'm seeing. We're going through about $3 worth of mineral every week compared to the $10 that we were going through when we were feeding the other way that we fed for a really long time. So I don't know if you've been doing the math along with me, but previously the goats cost $193 per week to feed. And currently with the free choice alfalfa pellets, the goats are costing $193 a week to feed. It's exactly the same cost to feed the goats, but just in their contentment, I can tell that it's better for them. Now, when I first started feeding the free choice alfalfa pellets, it was right at the time when I was starting to wean my Nigerian babies and start really milking my fall milkers full time. So I don't know for sure if I am getting more milk out of the does versus if I hadn't been feeding free choice alfalfa. But historically, whenever I have started to feed alfalfa when maybe I hadn't previously for whatever reason, I have noticed not only a volume increase in my does, but the amount of butter fat or the amount of cream that they would have in their milk really increased, which obviously increases things like butter yield and all that. It just optimizes what they genetically can produce. It just makes you see really what they're made of when they have access to stellar nutrition. So when we take into account that we will probably be growing better goats with higher quality and more volume of milk, potentially they could have more babies, better quality babies, easier kidding, just overall general better health as far as parasite resistance and things. I don't have anything to prove that that's going to happen yet, but I've been speaking to a few different people that have said, yeah, the nutrition of the goat really does dictate the health of the goat. And ultimately, healthy goats is really what we want. And it turns out we don't have to be spending any more money than we already were in order to get that. And that feels good. Those of you who are familiar with my herd know that I had been keeping my castrated goat, my male goat, Mochi, in with the girls. He loves the girl barn. He loves hanging out in the girl barn. I love to make Mochi happy when I can, but I did move Mochi out after about a week of the alfalfa pellets being in here because the alfalfa pellets really are high in calcium. I have actually heard both arguments. I have heard that alfalfa is high in calcium. I've also heard that it is higher in phosphorus. In any case, it's something where the balance is off as far as their potential for growing urinary calculi. And so I wanted to pull Mochi, mostly because Mochi is not a production animal. So with the girls, they're going to be using these minerals and things in order to produce milk. Milk takes a lot of calcium. Things like labor and birth take a lot of calcium out of the blood. And they're also using up a lot of calcium in producing babies. They are building the skeletons of those babies with the nutrition that goes into their bodies. And so a higher amount of calcium is safer for a production doe because she is using the calcium with her production. It's less safe for something like a buck or a wether, so I have moved Mochi out. And obviously, as you see, we are still offering free choice hay. They are going through a lot less of it, as I mentioned, and they are wasting a lot less. And this hay has been in here for a few days, this exact flake of hay. And the waste has been very, very minimal. They're not like digging through it for the best bits. They are kind of just leisurely taking what they need. And the hay is providing them that long stem forage that their guts, their rumens especially, need. Right now I'm using these little giant chicken feeders. They are a little bit flimsy, but so far it's been working okay. You can see they do open the top, and sometimes they eat from up here, which is fine. I had been feeding it out in this trough, and the little babies were getting in there and stepping in there, and it was kind of turning the alfalfa into a powder, and they wasted a lot more when it was open like this versus something like this. There's a grate down in there too, and so they're sort of forced to lick it and take it up a little bit more slowly, which I think is probably good. It's just a lot less messy, and when they can't get their feet in it, I feel like they tend to waste less of it. The goats in this barn also are completely ignoring their protein pail at this point. I bought this last year and I liked it. I felt like it was a good boost that the girls needed over winter, but they're needing far less of these kinds of supplements just with the free choice alfalfa. It's really interesting. Now, I'm not over here trying to tell you that this is the supreme way to feed your goats. I'm just offering this up as an option. It's something that I hadn't heard about in all of the videos that I've watched and all of the research that I did when getting goats. I never saw anybody feeding free choice alfalfa pellets. I had seen people feeding free choice alfalfa hay. We have tried that. The waste was incredible. I was basically flushing money down the toilet. I didn't like it at all, but in my herd, the free choice alfalfa pellet is a lot better, a lot less waste, a lot more is actually going into the goats to benefit them nutritionally. All right, how you doing on it? Huh? You growing those babies real good? Yep. So I don't know if free choice alfalfa pellets really is the be all end all. It's probably not. I'm sure there are regional differences with this, just like anything else. This is one reason I haven't made a goat nutrition 101 video, because it does change so much depending on the goats, depending on the region, depending on the goals of the homestead, and really the capacity of the animals that are on the homestead, the minerals that homestead has. It's just really complex. And so I encourage you to look at a lot of different routines of different people who maybe are in your area or produce dairy and things on their farm in the same way that you wish to produce on your farm, and kind of see what works for you. The cost was a wash as far as what I have access to in my area that might not be the same in your area. So that obviously matters too. I know $193 sounds like a lot to feed a bunch of animals, and am I really getting the production out of them that I need in order for that to be worth it? The answer is still yes. We do not spend $193 every week for the entire year, and the year's worth of production that we do get out of our goats really does balance out. I just sold quite a few little baby goats. Those have absolutely pulled their weight as far as paying for the rest of the herd to eat. The goats and their milk pays the way for all of them to exist and be here. Actually, for the most part, the production that the dairy goats bring to the farm and what we don't have to buy at the grocery store really helps put money back in our pockets so that we can afford to buy things like chicken food and rabbit food. The goats really do pull their weight and then some, and I took a video about whether or not dairy goats are worth it with like a price breakdown and all of that, and I'll link that right up here. You're such an angel. You really are a sweet girl. You too, Stormy.